Okay, this is lecture number 22, and in lecture number 21 we discussed about the rural Indian geography, rural geography of India. Okay, and today we will start with the urban Indian geography. And in urban Indian geography we will basically discuss first the urbanization processes. After that we will discuss the urbanization patterns. Okay, and then we will discuss about the metropolization of India and metropolization patterns. After that, we will discuss the potential conurbations of India, and what are the potential problems associated with this concept, slums of India. And then finally, the solution to the problem of urbanization of India. Solution to the problem. Okay, because urbanization has become today itself a problem. Okay, so that we will be discussing in the last section. So urbanization is again a big topic. So let us start with the first topic, the first part, that is the urbanization process. Urbanization processes. So urbanization processes we will be dividing in three parts. Okay, three parts. The first part is the social process. The second part is the economic process, and the third part is the geographical process. So urbanization can be geographical process. So urbanization can be explained using these three processes, that is social process, economic process and the geographical process. Now when you come at the social process, you can further divide it in three sections. That is, the first is the Aryanization. Second is the Persianization. Okay, and the third one is the Westernization or Western phase. Now in Aryanization process, the urbanization happened, as we know, around the main bazaars, right? And these bazaars grow outward, right? These bazaars grow outward, and the cities in the Aryan period or even the Persian period, they were the main center of escape. People used to escape the persecution from the rural areas where the caste based discrimination or the religion based discrimination was present. So basically, in the Aryanization process, the main center, actually, although there was little migration, but that was no close to zero. So the main growth of the urban areas was the natural growth. Okay, the population which was living there, only that grew. Okay, this was the first thing, and the second, as we said, that they were mainly the refuge zones, that is the escaping the persecution from the countryside areas, right? So this was the main thing, that how in the Aryanization period the cities grew. However, in the Persian period, that we mainly the medieval period, the new bazaars were established. You can say new bazaars were established, new headquarter cities were established, new cities were established. For example, subas during the Mughal time. So these acted as a growth pole, and around these subas again the population concentrated, leading to formation of new administrative headquarters. Okay, and they were mainly dominated by the Islamic influence. Islamic architecture was main influence there. Okay, other aspect of the cities in the Persian period, that they were well forted. Okay, that means fort walls were constructed around the city. Okay, this created a more safe zone in these cities, so they were more safe. So these cities attracted again large number of people in the Persian period as well. However, in the Western period, that was the most recent period in the urbanization process. In the Western period, there was European influence on the cities. Number one, what we say, the European influence on the cities. Okay, so under this, what happened? The emergence of the retail and the wholesale. Emergence of separate retail and wholesale centers. Separate retail and wholesale centers. Okay, and this separation created what is called as this CBD type of model in Indian cities as well. So this CBD type of model, the central business district, central business district. So this type of model was again seen in Indian cities as well. Although the CBD model was based on the Western model, where the cities main was the factory zone, that was the zone 1, and around that zone there was the growth of city. Okay, there was in migration as well as out migration. Basically the main factor was the centrifugal force, that is the out migration of the higher classes, upper classes, and the working class people from the factory zone, which had become the dark zone. So in the western period, during the westernization, main influence was the western influence, and the cities grew around the CBD lines as the Chicago and other western cities were growing basically. So this was the social process of urbanization. In these three heads we can discuss the social process of urbanization. The next process of urbanization that we said was the economic process of urbanization. This one, economic process of urbanization. So economic process of urbanization is basically, we will discuss in again three parts. The number one is the primary occupation based cities. Primary occupation based cities. Right. Second is the secondary occupation based cities. And the third one is the tertiary occupation based cities. In primary occupation based city, for example, mining towns, for example, fishing towns. Okay, these towns were basically primary occupation based. Around these, the concentration of population happened and they become into the towns and the cities, but these cities were relatively smaller cities. Okay, and the less differentiation of the commercial and the housing functions. Less differentiation. When you come in the secondary occupation based cities were basically, they were based on manufacturing, right? So the factory zone got established at the CBD part, central business district. Okay, due to this factory zone, there was the growth of the centrifugal forces out of CBD. So the working class people and the higher class people, they migrated out of the CBD. So what happened in the secondary based cities, there was a clear cut differentiation. Okay, and so we will say that there was differentiation of the household of the working class and the factory zone, right? Not only differentiation, but these cities experienced this sprawl, urban sprawl. The city part that extended in the rural parts. Okay, the city people, for example, this was the main cities and this was the rural area. So cities started expanding in the rural area in haphazard, unplanned manner, creating additional problems that we will study in the urban sprawl separately. So urban sprawl, for example, in Delhi is witnessing horizontal urban sprawl. However, Mumbai is witnessing the vertical urban sprawl, and both, there are the different regions for this vertical as well horizontal sprawl, both for both cities, both Mumbai as well as Delhi. Okay, and this sprawl led to conversion of a single nuclear city in the multiple nuclear city. So single nuclei city, which was earlier based on the CBD, that gradually converted into the multi-nuclear cities. So this was the based on the secondary occupation. And then comes the tertiary occupation based cities. Okay, they were the new administrative headquarters. They were new administrative headquarters. Okay, where new service industries got established, new service industry migrated. Okay, because of whether it is the tax benefits or the land acquisition benefits, right? And these cities witnessed the heaviest sprawl. Okay, so the sprawl, although sprawl was also being happening in the secondary cities, but that was very minor. However, the sprawl happened very fast and rapidly in heaviest manner in the tertiary sprawl, the tertiary occupation based cities, right? So basically this feature, single nuclei to multiple nuclei, this must fall in the tertiary base, not secondary. So secondary cities were mainly the single nuclei cities where the CBD was the main center for almost all kind of services. But in tertiary occupation based cities, the single nuclei cities got converted into the multiple nuclei cities. For example, if you see, for example, let us say this is Delhi. Okay, around Delhi you have one side Gurgaon, you have one side Ghaziabad, you have one side Ballavgad. Okay, similarly Faridabad. So Delhi's poll led to, although it was happening in horizontal manner in all the direction, but it led to creation of the multiple nuclei. For example, here Gurgaon service industry got established, in Faridabad automation industry got established, in Ghaziabad again the manufacturing industry got established. So similarly, this horizontal sprawl led to creation of the multiple nuclei in case of the tertiary occupation based cities. Okay, these were mainly service centers. Okay, but nothing happens in silos. Although secondary cities, secondary occupation based cities and tertiary occupation based activities, they both led to creation of this complex structure of the multiple nuclei cities. Moving on to the third process that we said, the first process we said was the social process, then economic process. Moving on to a third process, that is the geographical process, urbanization as the geographical process. So urbanization as a geographical process. Again, this can be divided in three parts. Number one is the macro urbanization. Okay. Number two is the metropolization. And number three is the suburbanization or counter urbanization. See, macro urbanization, in macro urbanization we'll study the increase in population in urban areas. Now this increase in population in urban areas does not happen in a linear fashion. It has some correlation with the demographic transition model. For example, in demographic transition model, what we said that during the first phase, the mortality rate and the fertility rate were almost similar but very high. Gradually, the mortality rate first declined and then fertility rate picked up the mortality rate decline, and this was the situation in the demographic transition, right? So the macro urbanization on the basis of the phases of the demographic transition can be explained. For example, in the first phase of this phase witnessed the almost, I mean, conditions were not heterogeneous but homogeneous. The societies were almost same everywhere, the economic condition were almost same, so there was no nothing that can motivate the migration. So the migration in the first phase was very low. Okay, and then migration picked up. So migration picked up here and it become almost, so this phase, in the fourth phase, migration can either decrease or increase. It depends upon the policies of the country. But after first phase, the migration gradually increased. Here in the first phase, the urbanization, let us say in case of the Aryan period, when the or Persian period, where the societies were almost subsistence based. The urbanization was mainly driven by the natural growth of the population in the urban areas. So natural growth was the main factor for the urbanization in the first phase. Okay, but in case of the second, there was the two processes also become two processes. One was the, but what we can say in this, in the stage number 2 also, the natural growth was still more than migration, still more than migration. In the phase number 3, migration and the transformation. What? Migration plus transformation of urban areas. For example, a smaller urban area become bigger urban area, category 3 city or class 3 city converting into the class 2 city. That is the transformation. So migration and transformation, they become more than the natural growth. That means the stage 3 was dominated by the heavy urbanization streams, whether it is urban to urban stream or rural to urban stream. However, in case of the stage 4, when you see, there are the two cases. One is the increase in the urbanization, or second is the decrease in the urbanization that may happen. And it all completely depend upon the immigration policy of the country. So if the country's immigration policy is favorable, for example in USA, then the urbanization will continue to increase. Okay, however, if immigration policy is not favorable, then the urbanization or the urban population may decrease, as in many countries of the Europe. So this was the first process, that is explaining the different manner or the increase in the population in the urban areas in the different stages of the demography. How, as the demography changes, the different streams of the urbanization changes. So this was the first process. Moving on to the second process, that is the metropolization. Now the metropolization is a feature of the developing countries. Now in metropolization, what is happening? The fast growth of the population, fast growth of the big urban centers, and like metropolitan city, million plus cities, they are rapidly growing. Because why? The reason for this growth of the big urban centers is because in the intervening opportunity. Let us say this is class 1 city, this is class 2 city, this is class 3, and this is class 4 cities. What people are doing, from the class 4 they are not migrating to class 3, they are directly migrating to class 1 cities, big cities. Similarly, from class 3 they are not migrating to class 2 but to class 1. So this is leading to creation of a very big center like Delhi in case of Mumbai, in case of the Western India. So this rapid growth or fast growth of urban center is the metropolization, and it is the feature of developing country, right? For example, if you see the 52 large cities of India contain the 42% of urban population. 42% of urban population. So this is the kind of heavy metropolization which is happening in India. Okay, and this is not a definitely favorable feature, because it adds a number of vulnerability and the burden on these class 1 cities, whether it is the infrastructure burden, service burden, crimes, unemployment, and the many other vices which gets added to these class 1 cities, right? So this is the second process, the geographical process, that is the metropolization. The third geographical process is the counter urbanization. So the third geographical process is the counter urbanization. Now, what is counter urbanization? Counter urbanization is reverse migration actually from the urban centers towards the rural center or away from the urban center. Now counter urbanization is mainly the features of the developed world. Is the feature of developed world. The core city has no outlived its, whether in terms of the population or in terms of infrastructure. Because of that, the population living in the main core center of the urban areas is migrating either along the peripheral ways or in their rural households. So another feature is also there in the counter urbanization, that is the second home. Many urban dwellers, they are owning the second home in rural areas where they go occasionally. So this is also the part of counter urbanization. Okay, and this is mostly unplanned, again adding the problems in the rural areas of inequality. Okay, and many other problems. So these are the three basically processes of the urbanization which we discussed: the social process, economic process, and the geographical process. Okay, now we have studied the migration processes. Now let us study, sorry, urbanization processes. Now study the urbanization patterns. So the next topic is the urbanization patterns. Now pattern we will study in the two section. Basically the first is the temporal pattern and the second is the spatial pattern. So the first pattern is the temporal pattern, that how with the time the urbanization has proceeded in India. So temporal pattern, now it can be depicted with a very simple graph, that initially in 1960 the urbanization in India was close to 17%. In 1960s urbanization was close to 60%, close to 17%. This was the urbanization level. In 1991, urbanization reached to 25%, and as per 2011 census, the urbanization in India was 31.16%. 31.16%. So urbanization has continuously grown, but slow. It was a slow process in India. Now there are a number of reasons for this slow growth of the urbanization in India. The number one reason can be said the strict definition of the census. Strict census definition of urbanization. For example, in the census definition, the urban population that is living more than 75% must be engaged in the non-agricultural based employment, non-agri employment. So it is a very strict definition, again a strict figure 75%. So this again added ambiguity in the urbanization figures. The next part is that the urbanization, in temporal pattern we are explaining that we cannot say that the temporal pattern in India is uniform, right? For example, in 2011 census, when you see in 2011 census, rural areas, no, they added 90 million people, right? However, urban areas, they added 91 million people. Even after that, we say that the growth of the rural areas was more than the urban areas. Even see what is figure showing, that urban areas added more people than the rural areas in 2011 census. But because of the base effect, because of base effect, that is number of people or population that already exist, on the basis of that the growth rate in the rural areas exceeded growth rate in rural areas that exceeded the growth rate in urban areas, right? Let us see this with example. See, empowered action group states, the states which are more backward, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, MP, Uttarakhand, etc. Not Uttarakhand, the Jharkhand, etc. So if you see in the EAG state, the empowered action group state, this is the temporal scale. This is 1970, let us say, and this is 2011. This is growth rate of population. Now in EAG states, as I said, although number of people added in the rural areas were less than urban areas, but growth rate in the rural areas was more than urban areas because of base effect, and you can see it very clearly from this diagram. This was something like that. This is the growth rate in the rural areas, this is the growth rate in rural areas, okay, and this is growth rate in the urban areas. You can see that the growth rate in rural areas is always more than the growth rate in the urban areas, even in 2011 census. And but when you see in case of the non-empowered group, when you see in the non-EAG states, that is non-empowered action group states, non-EAG states, this is 1970, okay, and this is 2011. This is population growth, okay. The population in the rural areas, the rural area population growth and the urban area population growth, they have picked up in 2011. That means the gap in the EAG state and the non-EAG state is very vast in terms of the population addition and the population growth rate. So this is what how we explain the temporal pattern of urbanization in India. Moving on to the spatial pattern, that how on the spatial basis, because urbanization is not uniform across the country. So when you see the spatial pattern of urbanization in India, spatial patterns, right? See this. The areas which have seen more than 40% urbanization, more than 40% urbanization, the areas which have seen urbanization between 30 and 40%, 30 and 40%, and lastly the areas which I'm leaving the blanks as a blank space, the areas which have witnessed less than 30% urbanization. So most of the South India, including Gujarat, this one, Maharashtra, these areas have witnessed more than what we say the 40% urbanization, this part of India. And similarly in Punjab, Haryana region, this region as well, more than 40% urbanization. However, the areas of the MP, here this area, 30 to 40% urbanization, and this similar trend can be said to be present in the West Bengal also. Okay, and this part of India, that is the Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand and HP Himachal Pradesh, and the remaining India, this, let us say this with this thing, this India has the urbanization which is less than 30%. Now there are, let us explain the reasons for this. First of all, for the areas which have witnessed a high urbanization, few reasons can be written. For example, number one is the strong push factor, strong push factors. Okay, number two is the in migration. Okay, establishment of new headquarters, establishment of new administrative headquarters. So these are the main reasons for the high urbanization. Similarly, 2-3 reasons for the low urbanization can also be written. Reasons for the areas which have witnessed the low urbanization, that is the less than 30% urbanization. So in these areas there is a strong, I think I wrote wrong there, it is the strong pull factor, sorry, this one, strong pull factor, the attraction factors, whether it is the employment or it is the education, health facilities, these act as the strong pull factor in the areas which have witnessed the high urbanization. However, in the areas of low urbanization, for example in Bihar or Jharkhand, there is a strong push factor because of the high unemployment, poor services, whether it is the health or education, then out migration. So this push factor is basically related to the out migration, so heavy out migration. Then the physiographic limitation, for example in the Northeast India, these are the main reasons for the low urbanization. Similarly, the 2-3 reasons can also be written, or one main reason actually for the medium urbanization, the urbanization where it is in the 30-40% range. Okay, it is basically these regions have multiple nuclei or the secondary cities. For example, in MP there are number of secondary cities, whether it is the Ujjain, Indore. Okay, these secondary cities, they intercept the larger streams, the big streams. For example, a big rural to urban stream which is, let us say, happening from the Bihar region, Bihar Bhagalpur region towards Delhi region, is generally not intercepted by any other intervening center. However, when a big stream may happen in the in case of, let us say, in case of Madhya Pradesh, that big stream from rural to urban, let us say that stream is trying to happen from the Bundelkhand region, okay, towards the Mumbai, but though that stream will be intercepted by the Ujjain or the Indore. So in case of that, the secondary cities have developed, which have led to medium urbanization. Okay, so this was the second part of this thing, that is the special aspect of the urbanization or the special pattern. The first was the temporal pattern. In the same, that is the urbanization pattern, the we are discussing the next, that is the classes of cities. Classes of cities. So the first is the, let us say, the cities which have more than 10 million people. These, their number is 3. Cities having 5 to 10 million people, their number is 5. Okay, 2 to 5 million people, their number is 11. Okay, 1 to 2 million people, their number is 33. And more than or million plus, their number is 52, right? So million plus cities became 52, and these 52 million plus cities, as I said, 42% of urban population, not total of urban population, is there in these million plus cities. And if you say the number of class 1 cities in India, they are 468, and these class 1 cities have 70% of India's urban population. So you can see the heavy urbanization that there in 468 million plus cities, or class 1 cities. So these are the different classes of cities that you can remember. Now on this basis, what is happening in India on this class, so let us make it here only. On this class basis, when you see, let us say this is 1931 and this is 2011. Class 1 cities population, the growth of the class 1 population, class 1 cities has increased, but the population or the growth of the remaining cities, that is class 3, class 4 cities, they have kept on declining. So these are the class 3 cities, class 4 cities, class 2 cities. However, the class 1 cities, they have continuously increased at the cost of these small cities. Now why is it happening? The class 1 cities are growing at the cost of the smaller cities. This is nothing but the transformation is happening, because class 4 cities, they are transforming in class 3 cities, and class 3 cities are transforming in class 2 cities, and class 2 cities are transforming into the class 1 cities. So this is the reason for the heavy growth of the metropolization at the cost of smaller towns, smaller cities in India. So this is the urbanization pattern that we can classify in 3 types, that is the temporal pattern, spatial pattern, and the classes of cities. Okay, next topic is the metropolization. So we have discussed the urbanization. Now in urbanization only, the next topic is the metropolization. So first of all, we will discuss the pattern of metropolization in India. So patterns of metropolization. See, as I said, the metropolization is the result of basically 2 factors. Number 1 is the strong pull factor, either is because of the services or government policies, strong pull factor. And the second one reason is the for metropolization is the skipping of intervening opportunities, So these are the main 2 factors, opportunities, for metropolization to happen. But our main focus is the what are the patterns that India is witnessing with respect to urbanization from the beginning. See, metropolization, although in 1901, when you see in 1901 there was only one metropolitan city, that was Kolkata. Everyone know that, only one metropolitan city in India. By the time we reached 1951, there were 5 metropolitan cities in India. 5 metropolitan cities: Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Madras, or Kolkata, and Hyderabad. So these were the 5 metropolitan cities in 1951, and these 5 metropolitan cities had 18.8% of urban population of urban population. Okay, now from 1951, by the time we reached 1991, the number of metropolitan cities increased to 23. By the time we reached 1991, they increased to 23, and the urban population, which was carried by these 23 cities, increased to 32.5%. 32.5% of urban population. Right. And there were again number of factors. Number one was the new growth poles were created. For example, new growth poles were created by government, for example Jamshedpur, Dhanbad, Nagpur, etc. Okay, and some other port cities developed, some other port cities, for example Trivandrum, Kochi, new port cities were developed. So these were the main centers which grew as metropolitan in this phase 1951 to 1991. Post 91, again there was the strongest metropolization that happened post 1991. The strongest metropolization happened, and in 2011 the number of metropolitan cities were 52, and they were having the 42.3% of urban population. Right. And during this addition from 1991 to 2000, again both inner as well as the external centers were added. For example, new state capitals were formed, new state capitals came up. Okay, whether it is Jamshedpur, Raipur. Okay, new port cities were also created, and similarly new commercial and industrial centers also came up. New commercial and industrial, for example Meerut, Ghaziabad, etc. New commercial and industrial centers. So these grew as the metropolization in this period from 91 to 2011. So this was the basically the temporal analysis of the metropolization that happened in case of India. When you see spatially also there is a very large variation in case of the metropolitan cities. In case of, for example, Northeast India, there is no metropolitan city. Okay, because of geographic limitations. So strong push factor operating there, no metropolization city could grow. However, in case of when you see Kerala, there are 7 metropolitan cities. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh, there are 7 metropolitan cities. So when you make this in on the map, this spatial pattern of urbanization in or metropolization in India, the different regions of India having the different regions, but the different metropolitan cities, number of metropolitan cities are present in the different region of India. For example, in Northeast, we will say that the no metropolitan city is present there. In Bihar, here, in Bihar, only one metropolitan city is there. In West Bengal, there are 2 metropolitan cities are there. Right. In Uttar Pradesh, there are 7 metropolitan cities there. Okay, this is the region of Haryana and Punjab. Punjab, 2 metropolitan cities. Haryana, 1 metropolitan city. Okay. In the Gujarat, 4 metropolitan cities. In the Rajasthan, 3 metropolitan cities. Okay, here MP, there are the 4 metropolitan cities. Chhattisgarh, 2 metropolitan cities. This is Jharkhand, 2 metropolitan cities in Jharkhand as well. In Odisha, only 1 metropolitan city. In Madhya Pradesh, there are 6 metropolitan cities. This is the Karnataka, 1 metropolitan city. Most surprising is Kerala. There are 7 metropolitan cities in the Kerala. This is Tamil Nadu, 4 metropolitan city. And this is here the Andhra Pradesh, 3 metropolitan city. Telangana, 1 metropolitan city. So, and here 0 metropolitan city. This is the metropolization of India. That number of metropolitan cities are different in the different states. Okay, but this is not only the case here. This sub-metropolization is also happening. Right, some metropolization means the different or the sub centers are also growing in the big metropolitan center. Okay, for example, this region we say having the shadow effect of the Mumbai, this entire region. Let us say this region is the Delhi metropolitan region, shadow effect of Delhi is present there. This region is the Kolkata metropolitan region. Okay, and let us further divide this region here in this part here like that. This region is the Chennai metropolitan region, and here the Hyderabad effect, and here is the effect of the Bangalore metropolitan region. But this sub-metropolization is also happening in the form of the secondary cities evolution. For example, this sub-metropolization is happening here from the Jaipur side. Okay, some metropolization happening here from the Patna, okay, from the Bhilai side, okay, Raipur, etc. So some metropolization is also happening, so you can make this in a dotted manner. So some metropolization, similarly here also Nagpur as has grown, so here Ahmedabad, so some metropolization happened here as well. So in this manner the some metropolization is has also happened here Guwahati in. Okay, some metropolization happened in the big metropolitan regions of India. Okay, so this was the classification of the metropolization and the metropolization patterns of India.